tracks from a horse.
And this is for the girl.
Rennie Perez is actually one of my favourite B-movie directors. I actually think he has a very distinct style, and it's hard to stand out in the kind of the low-budget movie market, but I do think Rennie Perez does do that. And you can always tell his films, or at least I can, just from his cinematography, which I actually think is excellent. However, writing is not his strong suit, or even co-writing with another person. And we are here to talk about the movie Righteous Blood, which stars Michael Pare, a regular in Rennie Perez's movies. Now, it's clear that Rennie Perez has a very strong view on things like religion and politics and stuff like this, and his recent films have been a much more overt in kind of like putting his point of views across. So, Righteous Blood is about a character called Jericho, played by Michael Pare, who is a gun for hire, but is being chased down by the law. And, you know, he's got various kind of bounty hunters that are after him to, you know, obviously to kill him and everything. And he kind of ends up running into this priest, and this ends up kind of having this sort of conversation where this priest is trying to change Jericho's kind of path in life. And then Jericho meets a couple of other characters, a mother who wants Jericho to essentially euthanize her young son who has got severe mental disabilities, and a woman who is kind of having problems of her own because she's barren. She can't give birth and everything. She can't actually conceive, and then this ends up kind of causing her husband to split up. Things like this. Anyway, so the movie is kind of like a very heavy-handed message to kind of like get your path straight and kind of follow certain teachings and all of this. And what will happen? Well, you're going to have to watch the movie to find out. So anyway, let's discuss what I think works with Righteous Blood. Now, as I said, I actually do really enjoy Rennie Perez's work. I think his stuff visually is absolutely spectacular, and all his kind of the movies that he's done. And he's done quite a few. He's done the Playing with Dolls series. He's done the kind of the Death Kiss movie, and a variety of other kind of like action and horror films. And I feel that he is, you know, he really does have an excellent eye for setting up an interesting shot, really kind of making use of, you know, the local kind of like scenery, location shooting and stuff like this to have quite dynamic looking kind of shots and things like this. And as I say, has this kind of distinct kind of washed out kind of style. And you know, he really does lean into the kind of the B-movie sensibilities as well, both in kind of horror and sci-fi and action. And, you know, he's no kind of like, he doesn't shy away from having kind of gore shots and stuff like that. So there's kind of stuff to enjoy on that kind of level. I actually think Michael Pare was actually quite good in this movie, I will say. Michael Pare, again, he can be a little bit of a mixed bag. He's kind of like a low-budget Bruce Willis, I always think. And if sometimes he'll kind of like just turn up for a paycheck. Other times he kind of seems to be a bit more invested. And I have to say, I actually did enjoy his character here, and actually comes across as quite an affable guy, even though, you know, he does have this kind of path. And even me, who I am not religious, I am an atheist, you know, I'm not so kind of closed-minded that I can't, you know, appreciate a point of view from somewhere else and stuff like that, and where it's kind of going. And you know, obviously the path of peacefulness, you know, no one's going to argue that's going to be a worse option really than kind of like going in guns blazing on most circumstances. So even though I'm not religious, obviously I can still appreciate the positive message that this film is trying to kind of put across. But I'll be honest with you, as I've kind of mentioned, as strong as I think Rennie Perez is as a visual director, storytelling is not his strong suit. So let's just start with that. So Righteous Blood doesn't have a lot of plot. It really doesn't, and this has been true of a few more recent kind of Rene Perez films. It has the most kind of like basic of kind of like synopsis, basic of premise, and doesn't really do anything like that. There's no real huge kind of like story arc for our characters and this one. Ultimately, it's just a kind of like a redemption, finding peace through God. That is what that's kind of the story of this film. It's not much more to it than that. And like I said, I appreciate the positive message, and even as someone who isn't religious, I could still appreciate that kind of like that positive attitude and that kind of, you know, turning, being more forgiving and things like that. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the story's so slight here. There's not much meat on the bones other than this kind of like, let's have this redemptive arc for this kind of like otherwise criminal kind of character. That there's not much more to it than that. It's just a little bit too, well, not even a little bit, it's very heavy-handed with its kind of religious message. I have to say, as much as I do think Rene Perez is a good director in some circumstances, one thing he doesn't direct very well is action sequences, where we have, you know, gunfight after gunfight in this movie, that it's just people kind of seemingly standing there static firing, you know, emptying their kind of like guns into air. It's very undynamic kind of action sequences and sort of shootouts that somehow become not particularly interesting. And it's, again, this is something I've seen in other Rene Perez movies as well, where it's just kind of like ultimately becomes a little boring and not really all that kind of well shot of action sequences, not well choreographed action sequences. And then we have to talk about some of the other acting here. I think some of the supporting cast here, unfortunately, is quite weak. I actually think that the little boy who is in this movie, even though he doesn't actually have any speaking lines, I actually thought was quite good. You know, nonetheless. But some of the other supporting cast here, again, I really feel are not particularly strong here, and give some quite unconvincing performances. I think the music is a little out of place because it has this kind of like modern sort of music to it, even though it's going to be obviously a period piece. And I have to say the ending left me a little bit confused. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but we have like a jump forward in time, and the female lead says something about offspring, and it kind of like it doesn't really reflect on the characters that we've seen in the movie. There's like a character missing, shall we say, thinking, well, what happened to that character? Because, and the way it's kind of, the line that is said, it kind of contradicts what we've just kind of seen, is all I'll say. Again, I'm trying not to be specific here. So overall, you know, as much as I enjoy the kind of the visual of Rene Perez and kind of how he can kind of compose a dynamic looking shot, and I enjoyed Michael Pare's performance here, it's really a nothing movie, to be honest, with a not particularly engaging storyline. Although, like I've said, I won't discount the kind of the positive message that this movie is at least trying to put out there. So I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to it.